Hi, this is AD Burrows here for CG Masters. Here I'd like to give out a little additional UV information. I wanted to take a look at a simple UV exercise, which would be correcting UVs after extrusion, which we'll tackle in just a moment. I also wanted to show a way to set it up so that when you extrude, it automatically shows the texture aligned, and this can be handy to help block out an environment, usually an architectural structure of some kind. As we build, we can see a kind of a checker pattern or grid actually on the mesh itself in 3D. Also, I'd like to take a look at an interesting UV add-on that will allow us to manipulate UVs in the 3D view without the need for the UV editor. So first, let's warm up with a simple UV exercise. So to start, I'm just going to give this a basic checker pattern, this plane that we have here. So I'm going to click on a new material. I'm going to click on the texture tab, click new here, change this to an image or movie, and then we're going to create a new one, and then this is going to be our color grid, and then I'm just going to click OK, and then we have our color grid show up. Now the next thing we need to do is just give it make sure that it's trying to use the UVs on the plane, and that's not particularly helpful right now because there aren't any UVs there. So I'm just going to tab into edit mode and press U, and then unwrap should give us the UVs that we need. And now we can see we're all set up to start this first exercise. So the first thing I'll do is just to give these two main windows here about equal space. So I'll just drag that out to about there. And then really the exercise just boils down to a very, very common action that you might take, which is just to grab a border edge that we have here. This is just a simple face, so any edge will do in this case. Also note that I've got keep UV and edit mode mesh selection in sync here, just so that we can see our corresponding edges and so on, without having to have all the faces selected. So if I just grab this edge here, you can see it's the one on the right hand side here, so the two views are kind of lining up. Then I can press E to extrude out, and then I'm just going to hold Control just to snap it exactly 2 units away from this edge. And as you can see, what would have been ideal is if we'd pressed E to extrude, that while we were doing that, this edge over here was also extruding out. So I don't know whether there are any coders that would be able to actually add that functionality or not, but that would be pretty amazing. So this leaves us with a little bit of an exercise to just resolve this. And one of the ways in which we can do this is to just simply grab this face. And as you can see there, it's all bunched up on the side. It's just a very, very thin face, and that's why we're getting all the streaking here. And what we could do is we could just grab the edge really, and then do exactly that, just kind of drag it out. And then if I press N to bring up our property sidebar here, this needs to be 512. So that's exactly across, because this area is pretty much 256. So from here 0 to here 256, and so another 256 on top would be 512, and then if we double that again, we're going to get to 1024. So 512 is exactly what we want there. Obviously that's not particularly ideal as a general fix-it-all kind of solution, so let's just undo that, and then grab that face, and then press E to unfold it, and now that's great, that works, but it only really works because this face is exactly the same size as this face, so it looks like it's kind of in position. So if I just press GX and then 256, it kind of looks like it's that, but before it was stacked. Now the other thing that we could do, of course, is just to grab that edge. If we didn't know exactly how many it was, we could just press V to stitch them together, and then that is basically what we wanted before, and that's achieved. If I just undo that step a few more times so we have it streaky again. So if I just grab that face with all make sure that I'm in vertices, and then press P while I'm in the UV editor here, and then we can see those selected UVs get a little red square over each one of them to show that they're pinned into place. Then what we can do is press A to select them all, and then press E, and then that unfolds everything. We don't need these pins anymore, so we can press Alt P, and that will unpin. If you struggle to remember those keys, of course we have the UVs menu down here, and we have our pin and unpin in the menu there, if you're unfamiliar with that. So let's just repeat that again. So that's basically the first exercise complete. So we'll just grab this, press E to extrude out, exactly 2 units. I'm going to grab this face with these vertices, and then press P, and to pin them while in the UV editor, grab everything with the A key, and then press E to unfold within the UV editor, and then that's basically where we want to be. So one last thing, it's not necessarily essential, but just keeps it clean, I guess, is to just unpin everything with Alt P while everything's selected. And that's exercise 1. The next exercise is going to be quite similar, but just one level up, so that what we can do is just to extrude out a central face so that it has edges all around it, not just the simple case of just one edge out to the side there. So tab into edit mode, I'm going to grab that face, I'm going to press W and then subdivide, and then I'm going to press F6 just to bring up that tool menu at the location of the cursor there, and I'm going to change that to 3. And I only want one single face here in the middle there, just to extrude up. So I'm going to get rid of this edge loop here by alt right clicking on it, and then shift alt right clicking on the next one, and then just pressing X to delete those edge loops. So I now have that single large central face, and all the edges are lining up with our color grid. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press E to extrude up, and then press Control, and then make sure that we're constrained along the Z-axis there, and then just move that up one grid unit. And so we have all the UVs in place, but we of course have all these streaky UVs in the newly created faces. So the exercise here is what is the best method of resolving this issue. So the way in which I'm going to do that is I'm going to preserve it so that the UVs down here are stitched from above. So kind of what I mean by that is the UVs I want to run from this face and around rather than from the base and up. Another brief aside to help with the understanding of UV pinning, if we select this face down here, note the vertex here between H2 and H3. This vertex has actually 2 UVs, not 1. So if I was to now pin this into position and then switch to vertex select mode with Control Tab so that we can now see those pins, it may look like it's pinned, that vertex, and so that point is now fine. It's actually only pinned the UV on the side of the selected face. The other UV that shares that vertex space is not pinned. So for example, at the top here, if I was to pin now, I actually don't have any of the UVs selected for the faces down the sides, but that's what we'd like to do. We want to pin the UVs belonging to the top sides of those streaked faces. So I'm going to need Control Tab to switch to vertex select mode while I do the pinning. In fact, I'll need to clear any of our other pinning first by selecting all with A and then Alt P to unpin in the UV editor. Then in wireframe mode with the Z key, I'll border select across with B those top vertices and then pin those into place with P. Everywhere else I can do in face mode, so I'll select those faces down at the base and then pin those into position. At this point, based on the first exercise, you might think we're ready to go. But we do have one more step here. What we need now are some seams. So I'm just going to create the seams that we need down at the bottom, like that. And then also we need that edge ring there. So I've got all these edges selected, and then we can press Control E and then mark seam. And then that's that. So let's try that again. So select everything and then press E to unwrap. And now we can see we basically have resolved the issue. So we have this A, B, C, D, E, kind of runs around that face. And then around here we have C1, C2, C3, D1, D2, D3, and all that kind of thing. That's all working. So let's just undo a few steps. In fact, let's just undo that whole thing. And then press W to subdivide. F6, 3 cuts. Let's get rid of those 2 edge loops. Grab that face, extrude it up like that, and then what I want to do is to be in vertex mode and then pin those into position. Then I'm going to grab all these bottom ones like that and then pin that into position. And then I'm going to grab them all, and then as we mentioned before, if we try and press E to unfold all the UVs now, that's not going to work. What we're going to need to do is create some seams. So the seams I want to be here, those seams, and then these edges here. So you can kind of tell the face that we extruded up and the hole that we want to protect. So if I go into Control E and then mark seam, we have that kind of thing, and then that should be it. So if I just select everything, press E to unfold everything, and then one last thing, select everything with the A key and then unpin with Alt P. So just before moving on, let's just do it in the reverse. So instead of being sympathetic to the UVs up here, let's make sure that it's tiling from the UVs down below. And you might find that there's a little bit of an issue with this, so let's just take a look. Let's tap into edit mode and mark our seams. So it's going to be this top face that will be isolated by seams here, and the ones down the side. So we can do that easily by just switching to edge mode and then use Control and numpad plus to extend our selection there. Then we can press Control E to mark our seam, and then that's it for the seams. And now with that top face selected, I'm going to pin that with the P key in the UV editor. And then with vertex selection enabled, I can border select across these and pin those into position, P. And then if we just select everybody and press E, we can see that we've basically resolved it again. So we've got C1, C2, C3, C4, and then on the other side we have these all run from the bottom now. So those are fine. But you may need to just play with this option here, because note how the difference is between this option here, the fill holes. This is just a kind of an option which might give better results in some circumstances. In this particular case, that isn't helping us, so we need to uncheck that. So that might be worth checking it out. Oh, incidentally, that we're getting mirrored sort of UVs there, which are often unpleasant if we're using normal maps and things. So we'll just bear that in mind and now move on. So here we are with the cube that is set up for the auto creation of those UVs. This kind of auto alignment is very good for early prototyping and blocking out of an environment, especially if it's architectural and you need to stick to the grid, which will give you more options with your modular workflow. The limitation to this is that this isn't actually creating UVs for us. This unwrap, as it were, stays in Blender. So if we press E to extrude up there, you can see there's no UVs being created in the UV editor there. In fact, if we turn this off, you can see that it's basically still streaking there. If you do want to export these UVs out somehow, the best thing to do really is, instead of using the UV project modifier, is to just unwrap with a cube projection, and then you can see you basically get the same kind of thing, but you just don't need to do it after the fact. And then we can scale depending on what it is that you're looking for out of that texture that you have to denote your grid. The other aspect to this is if we switch this back on, so that we make sure that we're definitely looking at our UV project modifier at the moment. This is working for the game engine, if I just press P to launch into that. So that's still workable there for things like blockouts. And so yeah, let's take a look at trying to set this up. Basically, if I just undo a couple of steps there, what's happening here is we have this UV project modifier, which can be found on the top left of the add modifier list there. And when this comes out, when we add a new one, you can see, if we just close this one for a moment, you can see basically you have these simple options. And the thing what we would need to do is to indicate that we have 6 options there. We want 6 projectors, one for each side of the face, a cube face, should I say. And you want to select the image and the UV map, or I believe if you don't have one in there, so long as there is a UV map on the object, it will find it. So that is not necessarily something you need to fill in. If we're using cameras, we can use the aspect, but we're just using empties for this, which you can see are grouped under one parent empty, which is just called UV project axis. And we have these 6 down here. The way that the UV project modifier works, if we just select the cube back again and delete that one and then open up this one, is in particular, if we select the positive X axis, that would be here I can see the gizmo, the 3 arrows which are coming off the empty that we can see there, and we're in local coordinates here. So that you can see the rotations of these empties. And the way that the UV project modifier works is that the texture is being projected down the negative Z of whatever object you've indicated as a projector. So if we move this around, if we move it by grabbing that there, you can see that it's basically only having an effect with the faces which are most aligned to the direction of the negative Z of that empty. So in this case, we're shooting down this way, so it's projecting onto any face which happens to be pointing this way. So this would be positive X, I've got it listed as there. The other thing to note, by the way, is you can make this project upside down by simply rotating the empty. The up direction of the texture is aligned to the up of the green arrow on the manipulator, that is to say the y-axis. The next one is the positive y-axis, and you can see again here this is shooting down the negative z-axis of the empty. I guess it depends on how you want to perceive this, whether you want to label this as negative or positive y in this case. And you can see that the rotation of this empty has been taken into consideration so that the y-axis is pointing straight up, and then the blue axis, the z-axis of this particular empty, is basically shooting straight down from this y-axis. So this is only going to affect faces from this angle. So if we just select that, we can see again it's only manipulating that. And then basically I've just parented them all to this, so it just kind of cleans up the view a little bit, and then we can just get on with the job of potentially just extruding it out, and then grab that face, move that up there like that, or whatever you need to do. Other ways in which we can actually change scale here is just to scale up the group master there, this UV project axis empty, or we could actually just scale individually. Whoops, if we just take a look at from this angle on this one, is press S and then maybe scale on the Y axis or the Z axis. You can kind of manipulate how the images are being projected, and of course you can rotate them around or do whatever it is that you might need to do. The way to apply this to a new object, by the way, would be if I just add another cube, for example, and then just move that off to the side. And now what I'm going to do is just shift select that, so we have this one selected and then this cube selected, and then just go Control L and link the modifiers and the materials. And then, as I say, this does need some kind of UV map. So if we just come over to here, we could either press U and then unwrap, or we could just come down to UV maps and press the plus icon, and then immediately now we have the same kind of thing. So we can now start to extrude and so on. That isn't actually working right now, so let me see why that is. We need this override image selected. So as long as we have that enabled, then this should work fine, and then you can carry on working on new objects or just extrude across, duplicate across, or whatever it is that you want to do. So one last thing I'd like to do is just to take a look at a add-on which is kind of in the same kind of ballpark, which is manipulating UVs just in a 3D view. So this is an add-on that you'll be able to find through the Blender add-on list blog that we've featured before on CG Masters on the Facebook page. And if we kind of come down to here and just cite, I know the name of the author of this, which is kgeogeo, so I've just typed that in there, and you can find the MoveUV add-on, which is in another tab, and here it is. And then you can see a YouTube video, the author there, as you can see, and then there's a download link here, which will go to a paste all link to be able to find this and download it. And once you've installed it as an add-on, if I actually bring up my add-on list, so once you have this installed, you can find your Paint MoveUVs there. I'm just going to enable that and then close that down. And then all this is, to be able to see this properly, I'm going to need to turn off this UV project modifier and then just tab into edit mode, and we see our UVs there. In fact, let's grab that face. Just to make it really simple, actually, I'm just going to delete all other faces. So I'm going to select that face, invert, press X to delete. Grab this, and then let's just do another subdivide, and then a subdivide again. And then what I'd like to do is, you can see these, in fact, let's make that a little bit smaller. And so let's just take this here, look from the top view maybe, and then press Alt G, and then you can see we're actually moving our UVs. And then just let go of them, just press right click there, and then that should be set. So let's just change the mode here so we can see the UVs while this happens. You can see I've moved it to there. So if we wanted to align that there, and we've got this color grid, and I just wanted to do it in the 3D view, let's say I want to kind of come to about here, and I'm thinking, yeah, this is out of alignment, let's just tweak this. So I can then go Alt G and then just roll the UV over to manually line it up to how you'd like to see it in the 3D view. You can see it changing in the UV editor at the same time. Finally, I can then just go right click to set it into place. Many thanks to kgeogeo for another awesome add-on there, and that should just conclude this video on just an assortment of UV things, really. Okay, I hope you'll join me next time.